Welcome to the Bishop's broadcast again. We've been doing this for 1 week as of tonight, and we thank you so much for joining in and tuning in. We want you to do a couple things for us. Please like this post and share it so we can get the word out. Tonight will be a little longer than we usually go because we have a lot more to do tonight, but we just want to say thank you so much for tuning in and joining with us and letting us come into your homes. And if you're watching on your phone or on YouTube or on your television, we thank you so much. We got a couple announcements that we want to make real quick before we get started. We want to let you know that we are selling t-shirts right now. They are $10 a piece. They're Racism is a Sin and I Am Revival. We sold quite a few this morning and through this week, but what you do to get yours is you just type in the comments there your name and what sizes you want, and Sister Jalen will get back with you in a personal message and tell you what we need to do to get this done. Also, we have aprons that are for sale. Sister Robin's been making aprons, and we've sold some this morning, and they've done a great thing here. They're cooking aprons, $10 for the children's, and $20 for adults, and $30 for licensed material of those aprons. Also, we want to announce that this Friday night, we won't be having any Bishop's broadcast, but we will be doing our 7 Last Sayings Cyber. We will have some of our leaders here and members here, but we will be social distancing, but this will be mainly for cyber. We got 7 ministers that will be preaching, 10 minutes apiece, and that will be at 7 o'clock on Friday night on Good Friday. Also, we want to say that we are having parking lot praise church on Easter Sunday morning like we did this morning. We had the final count, we was told, was 73 cars total here, and there was 2 other cars that pulled in. We didn't get the attendance on that, but we had 273 people in cars in our parking lot today, so we're thankful for that, and we're going to be doing that on Easter Sunday morning, Resurrection Sunday. It'll be a little different, but it was great this morning. I've had calls all day and people saying they're going to load their family up in their car and bring them here. But we just want to remind you that there will be no public restrooms. The service will just be 1 hour, and we will have a wonderful, wonderful time. Also, some other good news. We announced it this morning. We put $10,000 down on our building, which leaves us in the $50,000 range. So if we have 5 more things like that, we will be totally debt-free. And we are thankful that the Lord has allowed us to do that. And so we are coming down, we're getting those stripes down on the wall, and we are so thankful that the Lord has allowed us to do that. And so we're looking forward to when that pays off, and then hopefully by our fall revival, we are going to have a good time. We've already got our preachers scheduled for our fall revival. Dr. Jasper Williams, Pastor Doug Walden, and Pastor Johnny Twyman is going to be with us, and we are looking forward to that revival that we're going to be having. But tonight, we're so thankful that you have joined us here. I've been looking forward to this. I've been writing some questions down. I told Pastor Emeritus about this, but this was not pre-planned. I haven't told him the questions I'm going to ask him. We're just going to see how sharp his memory is at 80 years old, and we're thankful. He taught Wednesday night, and he'll be teaching this Wednesday night at 7 p.m. also, so we are looking forward to that. So every night at 7 o'clock, we'll have a broadcast. Tomorrow night is Brother Joe McGinnis and Sister Denise with our food ministry and homeless ministry. Tuesday is Brother Ron Varney, one of our deacons, and Robin. They're doing our capital stewardship program. We'll be interviewing them. Wednesday night, Pastor E will be teaching in the sanctuary Bible study. And on Thursday, we're having our men's ministry leader, Deacon Knox, and our women's ministry leader, Sister Nora. And then Friday's Good Friday, and then Saturday we're going to finish it off with Sister Pam, our Connections Ministry, and Sister Bev, our Prayer Ministry. So we got some good interviews coming up, and we're thankful for that. But tonight we've got our Pastor Emeritus, my grandfather, here, and we are thankful that he agreed to do this. And we're missing having church tonight, but we thought we would do something else a little different here tonight as we've been doing these interviews. So for those that may not know, which I don't think there's many of them, this is my grandfather, Pastor Emeritus James Walden, and he's 80 years old, and he's still preaching the gospel, and he's going to tell us some stories, and we are just thankful for that. So, Pastor E, there's some questions that we had here that we've asked. And also, I want to let you know, through the broadcast, you can call in, not call in, we don't have a call-in number, but you can message on Facebook, and they will write your questions down, and at the end of it, we will pick out some of them, and we'll answer them and have him answer them to the best of our ability. But Pastor E, the first thing we want to know is tell us about your mom and dad, what their names was, how many siblings, and where you grew up.
Well, on a cold December night, 1939, December, I came into this world in a small town in East Tennessee, Campbell County, in Jellicoe, Tennessee. My dad's name was James, and of course Walden. And my mother, her name was Edna, and her maiden name was Douglas. So they had gotten married in 1932, and so I came along in 39, and there were eight children, and I was the fourth one of the 8 children. So that's how that all happened. And it was a wonderful opportunity to be raised in a large family, and in a country setting as well. Born on a farm, learned the good deals of hard work and being applying, and had a dad that he could assign more duties by 8 o'clock in the morning than you could get done in a week. So he was a steward of our time as well. So
there was 8 children. So what were the 8? You had Sue.
And Sue was the oldest. Jerome was the next. Phyllis was the 3rd. I was the 4th. Jasper is the 5th. Tony is the 6th. Tootsie is the 7th, and Judy is the 8th.
They saved the best for last.
Yes,
right?
they did. It's amazing.
So you grew up in Jellicoe, and you was born right there in Jellicoe, which what is it, Crouches Creek?
Crouches Creek, yes.
Crouches Creek. So for you, I know that for you out there all know where that's out. But,
right.
That's right there. That's a suburb of Jellicoe.
Yes.
So, we was wanting to know how you met Sister Walden, my granny, and where you met her at, and what's that story a little bit there.
Yeah. Well, when Dad got saved and called to preach, and he was working and preaching in the areas there around Tennessee, and the Kipling Avenue Church, which is located on Kipling Avenue here in the city of Cleveland off Ivanhoe in South Collinwood, they were looking for a pastor. So they called my dad to come and be their pastor, and that was in August of 1951. And he gathered all 7 of us. The oldest daughter was already married, so she didn't come. And so 7 children and all our earthly possessions piled into a 1948 DeSoto and came from Tennessee to Cleveland. And that was the day when there were no interstate highways, and the trip, which nowadays is about 6.5 to 7.5 hours, back then was about 16 hours to come, and just 2-lane roads all of the way. So we came in August of 1951 to here, and Dad begun to pastor the Kipling Avenue Church. And so as we settled in with him being pastor, and back in those days in this church, people, especially members of the church, they were really frowned upon if they went to the theater to go to movies and things like that. But you know how children are. So had a little job at the 5 Points Meat Market up on St. Clair here and 152nd Street. And so I started going down to the Plaza Theater, which is where the post office is now on 152nd Street. And I saw this beautiful raven-haired darling that was prettier than anything I'd ever seen. So, and as I met her, and then I was moonlighting over there as an usher at the Plaza Theater, and got the chance to introduce myself to her, and then the rest is history. And that was in February of 1955.
Wow. So we had a picture of when you guys, right around when you first got married on the thing right there
Okay.
that we had pulled up and showed. But what year did you guys get married?
We were married, as I said, we met in February of 55, and she talked me into marrying her in September of 55. September the 25th, 1955, that we were married, and it was, a really wonderful thing, the greatest, besides when I met the Lord, it was the greatest thing to ever happen to me in my life, was that young lady named Merlene.
So you said when you met the Lord, that was my next question I had. So how, tell us how and when you got married, and the connection of what Granny had to do with a little bit of that too.
Yes, by all means. When Merlene we had gone to Maryland for a little while, and I lied about my age and joined the Air Force, and went to San Antonio and went through basic training there, and of course they caught up with me being too young, and of course they did give me an honorable discharge because I served honorably. But when we got married, Merlene had said, she said, because we knew her dad would never give his permission for us to get married. He's like most dads, nobody's good enough for my girl. And so she said, well, I could go out this window right here and we could elope, so, and I'm, young and foolish, so here we go. And she said, will your cousin go with us? Because she, of course, wouldn't go. And so my adult cousin, which was a female, went with us, and we drove to Tennessee and got married there at Crouches Creek, Tennessee. We were married, and then we came back to Cleveland. And she had, meanwhile, while I was in the Air Force, she had gotten saved and started serving the Lord. And Jerome, my older brother, who was pastor of this church then, had baptized her out in the Chagrin River. She was really following the Lord. So I came home from the Air Force in September. And when I got home, there, her and my mother and folk ganged up on me and nagged me into going to church. And so I figured, well, I'll go on Thursday night, which was the midweek program. And because I knew there wasn't much happened on Thursday night. So, but that was the night everything happened, because they never had preaching on Thursday night. It was just more like a prayer meeting. But that night, the pastor, who was my dad, James Walden, he preached that night. And when he preached and gave the invitation for sinners to come and get saved, of course, it's time for me to get out of here. So I got up and walked to the end of the aisle of the thing, and started to turn right to go out, but instead turned left and went down to the altar and knelt down, gave my heart to the Lord and asked him to forgive me, and he did. And there, standing by me, was Dad and my mother, my Sunday school teacher, Sister Miller, and Merlene. They had all conspired together, and but it was the night of nights for me, and that was the night that I came to the Lord, the last Thursday night in September, 1956. So That's been a long time ago.
So that was, I mean, it wasn't in this church, but it was this church.
It was this church. It was,
Right.
that time was on Kipling Avenue, right off Ivanhoe in South Collinwood.
So here we are. You met Grandma. You're the love of your life, and you come from Jellicoe. Moved to Cleveland. Went back to Jellicoe to get married.
Yes.
Then went to San Antonio, and then come back here and got saved. And then so now that you were saved, how, when, or kind of how did you know that it was that you was called to preach or called into the ministry?
Okay, thanks. Well, one of the things is that, of course, I came from a long line of preachers. That was one thing. However, that does not get the call to preach because your dad was a preacher, your older brother was a preacher. But when I got saved, I had just really fallen in love with the Lord and in His Word. I was in His Word continually when I had gotten saved, and I was reading the Word and come to the services, and as I did, I just became really encouraged, and it really had felt that the Lord working in my life even before this, when I was even 12 or 13 years old. I knew that the Lord had put a calling on my life. And there were sometimes, we've been asked the questions on other interviews, how do you know that, you're saved? How do you know you've been called to preach? Well, it's kind of like, how a person, know if they like chocolate or vanilla ice cream. You just know which one you like. And I knew that it wasn't like I heard one preacher. He said the reason I knew that I was called to preach, I was hungry for chicken all the time. So that was not, or the one who saw a cloud that had a big GP that go preach. And wasn't any of that. But it was just that steady drawing of the Lord to the work of the Lord as I began teaching in the Sunday school and working with the young people in the church, and then inviting me to speak on the nights. And so in 1957, I preached my first message, and then I was first licensed to preach in March of 1957.
Why did you do that?
Stop that. You got
All right. We're sorry about that for Facebook Live. Try to share it again. It was up to almost 50 viewers at one time. Just share it again if you can. So we'll give it just a second to let you know that we're back on. We apologize for that. I don't know why it interrupted. Are we good? All right, so we're on? Okay, good. So we left off of talking about his first sermon. What was the name of your first sermon again, or what you preached about?
Except the corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abides alone. And of course, we come to know that the Lord talked about that. And He said the first thing that happens is the little sprout that comes. And then comes the stalk, and then the full ear of corn. So that was what was happening to me, as the fall into the ground. Of course, we know that parable is also that the Lord was talking about. Unless He died, unless the seed died, there could be no resurrection and new birth and so forth. But that was my first sermon. It lasted a whole 6 minutes.
6 minutes, wow. That was a long sermon. Is that why you said when Jalen preached her first sermon, 20 minutes, she was going to be a long-winded preacher?
That's my exact preface right there. I knew she was on to something.
So I know you told the family about me and Doug and Jeremy and a bunch of us when we asked, but so at this time you preached your first sermon and you started preaching revival. So why don't you tell us a little bit how you ended up in Chicago, and then why you was in Chicago, those two churches that you pioneered and stuff like that.
Well, I'd worked here under my dad for about a year, and then I'd spent almost a year in evangelism. My first revival outside of this church was in Monongahela, Pennsylvania, and we had a time that's where Merlene was filled with the Holy Ghost, and she really, helped me doing everything an evangelist wife is supposed to do. It was just really amazing to do that. Then from there, my big, first larger church that called me for revival was Goshen, Ohio. And I was there, and just like I say, just really a kid, and I kind of thought about how I would do that. But when I got there, and back in those days, revivals lasted 2 weeks. When you went to revival, it was a 2-week revival. So I had to stretch out my 4 sermons over 14 days, and then from there I went to another one of our flagship churches, Monroe, Michigan, and it was really a break, and just Mount Orab, Ohio, and other places that went for revival, La Follette, Tennessee, Williamsburg, different places like that. And then there came a call from one of the brothers who had wanted to start a church in North Chicago, Illinois, which is up from the main city of Chicago about 50 miles next to adjoined Waukegan. And so he wanted me to come for a revival. And I said, okay. So Merlene and I, and we only had 2 of our children then, Don and your dad, Jim Jr. And so Jim Jr. was born, and this was in '59. He had been born in March of that year. So July, we were on our way to revival in North Chicago. And so we were going for a week's revival, and I wound up staying there 15 years. So the Aspinwall Church never wanted me to go anywhere else because I didn't know when to come home. That was the thing. So, but the Lord used us there to pioneer 2 churches. We pioneered our first church in 1959 in a place called Round Lake, Illinois. That's Lake County, Illinois. It's about 10 miles south of the Wisconsin border. And we bought our first building. It was a Grange Hall. We bought that and established a church, and we were there pastoring and pioneering for 5 years. That church is still going today. I revisited that church in 2009 on their 50th anniversary, and they built a new building out on the main street, and it was looking good. So, and then in 1964. A good friend of mine, a preacher by the name of Rudy Evanson, that was one of the heroes of my life. And he had had a church building, not a church building, but a 5-story building that was an old Danish hall, club-like place. And he wanted me to come and take over that building. But before I did that, we went down in the near north side of Chicago and started a storefront church at the Wood in Des Moines. Then we were able to purchase that building on Fullerton Avenue, and it was very near the freeway on the Western Avenue in Fullerton, and the folks from that area will know exactly where that's at. I was there for 10 years, pioneering and working. The church did well, and I was there for 10 years, and I turned the church over to one of our other, pastors by the name of Ernest Ray, and he continued and did well. The church fell into another kind of sad repair, caught on fire and burned to the ground. And that was, and so we do not have a building in Chicago, but many of the believers were still friends with them and know them. So in 1974, this church, the Aspinwall Church of God, called me to come and to be a pastor, and I was elected to come back home to be the pastor. Hometown boy comes home.
So that building had 5 stories on it.
It had 5 stories, and the sanctuary was on the 3rd floor, and it seated about 250.
And then you lived on what floor?
I lived on the 2nd floor.
And the fellowship hall was on the
1st floor.
Okay. So you had to be healthy to go to that church.
Yes, you had to really be healthy to get up all of those 3 flights of stairs to the sanctuary.
So before you came back to Cleveland, you left with 2 kids and you were coming back with 5,
With
right?
5, yeah.
So you have Don is the oldest.
Yes.
And then my dad, James, Jim Jr., and then the next one was Denise.
Was Denise.
And she was born in Chicago then, right?
No, Denise was born here.
Oh, here, that's right.
She came home, and her mother came home to be with her mother through that, birthing, and so she was born at the Euclid Hospital.
Oh, okay. And then, then you have, is it Trace? Or you have Troy.
Troy.
Was he born
in the hospital in Libertyville, Illinois.
Okay. And then you had Tracy.
Tracy, he was born in Libertyville.
All right. So you left with 2, and you're coming back with
5.
With 5. Mm-hmm. So we're going to hop off of that just for a second. We'll come right back to it. But you think your dad was proud to know that he had 3 sons preaching in the ministry? I mean, I know he had all of his kids, but he was preaching, and we got a picture of the 3 preaching brothers here we're going to show. But tell us a little bit about your dad and how proud you think he was.
Oh yeah, because I remember, because my dad's background was a moonshiner.
Yeah.
When I was a child, I went with him, to pick up things. But then when he met the Lord and got saved, I'll tell you, he was saved, from then on. He served the Lord, and so when he was here, and not only that, but he served as the district overseer. And when Jerome, of course, was converted first, and then myself, and then Jasper, the one that's the next one to me.
Uh-huh.
And he brought us right up under him. And then as he discipled us in the things of the Lord and the study of the Word and living right and doing that. And then as we began to preach, we began to circulate in the district and so forth. And then in 1962, Dad retired from the preaching because of his health. And then Jerome became the pastor of this church. And so Dad, there were 2 words he rarely used, and one of them was can't, and the other was quit. And then he thought if you had that attitude, that you could do that. He was so proud of his that were in the ministry, and backed them all of the way, used them to preach and do the work of the ministry day in and day out. And he just was he was such a mentor and such a model, and a really great preacher in his own right.
So he had you 3 preaching boys, and then he adopted 2 of them too, right?
Yeah.
Brother Prophet,
Yes.
and
Brother Mooneyham.
and he loved them just as much as
I think more sometimes.
right.
Because they stayed with him longer. He was at a church over on the west side, and they worked with him in the church. So Dad was a church builder, and he pioneered the church over in Rittman, Ohio, and pioneered the West Side Church, pioneered the churches in this district, Willoughby, and so forth.
So, and he was a district overseer too.
He was a district overseer.
But your dad, when he done that, when he passed away and went to be with the Lord, you were pastoring Aspinwall.
Yes.
And Jerome was the overseer.
No, I was still in Chicago. No, I was here. I was in Aspinwall because that was in 1977.
Right. So then Jerome was overseer or mission director.
He was the missions director.
And then Jasper was at La Follette.
He was in La Follette,
Yeah.
Tennessee.
So he was, I know he had to be proud of that. Why don't you tell us, we got a picture of just you three preaching. We have one with your dad on it too, but you three, talk to us about your guys' the three brothers going to Jamaica. Your little theme.
Yes, yes. You know, ever since I was saved, there's just something about the spread of the gospel and doing missions that became part of me right from the beginning, and it was in Dad to get the gospel to the next town. So we had an opportunity to go to Jamaica and to do a crusade, and so we had Jerome, James, and Jasper in Jamaica for Jesus. So we were there in the crusade at Davis Cove, and I'm telling you, people came from everywhere. You could not believe the crowd. The whole yard was full. The road was full, and as we would preach, and people would respond to Christ, and then the big baptismal service following on that Sunday morning. You know, it was the dream of a lifetime to be able to go and visit that that mission field in Jamaica, and of course today we've got about 25 churches in Jamaica, beautiful buildings, churches, and great ministries that are operating in Jamaica.
Yeah, so you went to Jamaica and got to minister with your brothers also, which has been great. And that's awesome. And so Jerome was pastoring here in Cleveland, and then you were pastoring in Chicago. Jerome became the mission director, and so tell us, how that happened. What year you come back here, and what was the feeling that you felt the Lord wanted you to come back to home?
Yes. Well, for some time there in Chicago, I just knew, because we had a replacement, because that if you have success but no successor, you're geared for failure. So we wanted to do that, and we had the replacement in point and so forth in Chicago, and the Lord was working with me at this time. And then Brother Jerome called and said he was considering running for the missions director for the Church of God Mountain Assembly with our international headquarters in Jellicoe, Tennessee, and that if that happened, would I consider coming, if the church would elect me to be their pastor, would I consider coming back? And that was probably in February of 1974, because we were doing that. So in August, Jerome was elected missions director at the General Conference in and I gave my name to the pulpit committee that I would come and serve if elected. And I was elected, I understand, with it was almost 100% vote. There were 2 no votes. That was in, but the rest.
Did they let Granny vote or something?
Yeah, they must have let Granny vote. But she was glad, and she was really glad to come back, because her mom and dad still lived on Pepper Avenue, the next block over, and that we came in '74 back here to become pastor.
So you come back home, and that was in 1974. So share with us, since you come back here, and Jerome had brought the church over from Kipling Avenue to Aspinwall here, and they built a sanctuary and bought a couple houses here on the block. But when you come back, share with us of some of the success that God allowed you to have. And we have some pictures of the bus ministry, and tell us about how many buses that you guys had. In the one year we were looking at the records, how many you guys ran at your highest point here, and some of those things, and how important that was for our church to do that.
Yes, and of course, when I came back here and became pastor, I waded in as quickly as I could, but not too. if you're going to pastor successfully, it's not too much too soon, but getting to know everybody and the people that were here were great people. That building that Brother Jerome, that was in 1966 when they built the old sanctuary church, and we had a really great congregation. They were really followers of Pastor Jerome almost without question. And his instruction to me was, Jim, treat these people with love, and they'll follow you wherever you go, and you'll be able to do that. So as I began ministering, and the bus ministry was in operation. They had 2 buses. So within about a year and a half or so, we had 4 buses, and then 5, and then in Easter in 1979, we had to go to Spellacy High School for our Sunday meeting, and there was 1,325 that came that day. We had 6 buses, and all of the children had to meet at this building, not this one here, but and we were over there, and when we decided that we wanted to build this building, it was in 10 years later after I got here. We actually broke ground for this particular building on Easter Sunday, 1984, and then it took us 2 years to complete this building. And during those years, we ran buses. Sometimes we had up to 6 buses, and one time we may have had 7 buses. And but they were it was just amazing to see the number of children. Our church polity was not set up for that imbalance of children to adults, and especially in leadership. So it began to settle differently, where we could do a better job of teaching and sharing with the young people. And even today, I meet people all over this city that remembers riding our buses to Sunday school, that today are pastors, that are choir leaders, that are Sunday school teachers, that are workers for God all over this city and in other cities of this nation that are gone. One lady I talked to not long ago wound up in a lab and really followed the things of the Lord. And today in California, we have people that came up through this and are workers and laborers together. So what a joy it was to be used of God. And of course, the best year of average was in 1979. We averaged 489 every Sunday for that year.
So somebody today messaged us and said about he lives in Pennsylvania, and said that he's saved and still serving the Lord just because of the bus ministry there. This week we interviewed Brother Tone and with our arts ministry, performing arts, and look at the kids they were doing this morning at the thing. I mean, he come from the bus ministry, and there ain't a month that goes by, and I don't exaggerate, that ain't evangelistically speaking, that we go by, that I go around in this city, that I find somebody say, I used to ride the bus and get that 200-foot banana split or 100-foot banana split.
It was a 200-foot.
200, yeah. And I used to go and kid, and Brother Tone said in an interview the other night that I asked him how he came, and he said the only reason he started coming because he knew when he got off that bus he was going to get a full-size candy bar.
Right.
And so he was so excited about that. But it is important, we know, to do that. So one thing you've always told me since I've been here in 10 years is that records are important.
Yes.
Always write down everything, keep records, and it's taught me well to do it. But to look back and see that, we was going over the records the other day,
yeah,
showing us where some Sundays they had big events and they'd have 900 and 800 and 650, but that average was right around 500. That was so awesome. The building we're in right now is a sanctuary that we We have celebrations on Sunday and preach, and Wednesday Bible study, and we do all kinds of stuff. But the men of the church and the women of the church, and you basically, I mean, you had to hire some out, but you guys come. Tell a little bit about that. How the people really just built this church.
Yeah,
how we
absolutely.
did that.
When this building was under construction, we had the ladies of the church. They said we'll provide lunch, and so Rosa Moses was the leader of our women's fellowship, and so she organized all of the ladies. And this building this particular sanctuary is a 75-foot square. And we dug, us men, we dug the footers by hand of this building. And the first 4 months that we were building on this, it rained every day. And
Oh
so
my goodness.
We'd have to come over here in the morning and bail the water out of the footers and things that we had dug.
Started.
All right, we are back for the final and last time. We are having some complications, they're saying, because of the president being on right now and different things. But anyways, we are back here. So we got it to where they built the church. They had it here on Easter service. And so you started 2 years, broke ground on Easter, and then you was back here on Easter,
Yes.
right?
Easter 84, broke ground. Easter 86, we had our first service in here.
Wow. So we know that you got here and you've done work. Why don't you tell us? We wanted to ask you this question. We know that you started to even have a heart for missions more. Can you tell us a little bit about meeting Pastor Sam in India and how our church started supporting them in that?
Yes. Well, we had a family that had moved in over here next door to us on Aspinwall Avenue. That her mother, Sister Strong, was operating a home for children in Velour, India. Now, my first trip to India was in 1971 that I went, and but just to get this one ready, is that when I had gone to establish that children's home I think that was in 78 or 79, something like that, and met Sister Strong, and that while I was there, I met Sam Daniel. He was conducting services, and you've been there. You know how we conduct services on the top of the houses, and
Right.
he was having it on top of the bank. So, yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Right.
And it was a relationship that had started. It developed into real ministry, and it just kept growing. And then Pastor Sam, we brought him over here to meet our other folks, and then he began to establish churches for the Church of God Mountain Assembly, and became the overseer for India. And now there's about 40 some churches and another 20 preaching stations in India that it started just from that relationship, and where it started just from knowing someone who lived next door that I was able to go and to do that. And so here we are 50 years later, and still working the works of the Lord, and going for the children's home, still operating a girls' children's home there in Velour, India now. So that's how that worked.
So his son Benji was actually online this morning watching our service. And if you're watching, Benji, we love you, man. And we're excited to when you can come over here and see us.
Oh yes, come Benji.
Yeah, come quickly. So we know that. So now Sam, we've been there. He has 500, 600, 700 at times at church,
yes.
even more than that.
1,000. Yes.
And it's just a wonderful thing. Before Granny passed away, and she passed away in 2011, how long have you guys was married?
Yes. Well, we were married for over 55 and a half years, so think about that. And so when she became ill, of course she had been a diabetic for some time, and then also she developed COPD and was never a smoker, or we never understood that. But and then she had started into the beginning of Alzheimer's, and as she became more ill, and that we just and then all of them ganged up on her one time and taken her to the hospital, and the doctor had come and said to me that her family physician that had been her doctor for years at that time, he said, I've done all I can, and I said, okay, send her home. I want her to come home. And they did, and we brought her home, put her in the care, and as a result, she lived another 3 weeks, and then went home to be with the Lord on the 21st of March. And I was just at the cemetery the other day on the 21st of March.
9 years ago.
Yes.
That don't even seem possible.
9 years ago.
So give us a small history. So from you and Granny, how many kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, and all that. I won't go into detail how many's male or female.
Well, we won't have time for that. But just think, when I came here, I had one wife and 5 kids.
Right.
All right. And then later on, I had, still had one wife and 5 kids, and then daughters-in-law, one son-in-law, and then have 14 grandchildren, and then I have 27 great-grandchildren, and then I have 2 great-grandsons. So that's that's the lineage, and my tribe is still growing.
Right. And I know Pastor E, he always buys my dinner when we go to eat, but at Christmas time, when he's got to pass out all those cards, I got to buy his dinner during Christmas.
That's for
time.
sure.
Because he's always doing that. But Pastor E is always remembering all the grandkids and birthday cards and Christmas. He's just too kind to us for all of that. So let's fast forward. You pastored 15 years in Chicago. And then Granny had passed away in 2011, and it was, I couldn't imagine how hard it was on you. It was hard on all of us. It was still unbelievable. Sometimes I still don't think that it's real, but I know that it is. But so anyways, in 2011, she passed away. I come here in 2010 and started working with you, and then so talk a little bit about how you knew it was time to retire or time to pass the mantle, and then when you did that and what we've been doing since then, and then we'll go to some questions.
Yeah, we know that in a church the size of this, that a pastor needs a wife to be as successful as he should be, and the church was doing so well, and but we just knew that it was time, because I was getting older at that time as well, as about 70 at that time. So then just when I knew that it was time, and that's why I called and asked you to come and be on staff and serve the Lord here. And you and Angie and the girls, they came and came with you, and and you worked with me those first few years, and then in 2010, that was when you came, and in 2014, we knew that it was time to pass the mantle, and so we had the pastor's election, and you were elected. And like your grandpa, you had 2 no votes.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
And it's probably Angie and your mother.
Right.
But that was the way. And since then, we have, it was such a God's timing event that it happened. Because if you fail to plan, then of course you plan to fail. And so the church, since we have passed the mantle, the church has grown, especially in the adult congregation, and financially, and the outreach that we're doing around the world with our containers that we send somewhere to a needy place every year, 40-foot container. You've just done a tremendous job. And as I look, I just sit back and look and see what the Lord has done, and to know the way that God has chosen you, and the way you're able to plan, the way you're able to not only plan and talk, but to execute the things that need to be done, and how the people have just fallen in love with you and your family to do the work of God. And they may even love your family a little better than you. I can't. But it just shows in every step that God has led me through the years, from when I got saved, all the time. He has made provision. He has made provision.
I know God's hand was in it, so some people always ask me. They say, "So what does your grandfather do since he's retired now?" And I said, "I work him harder than he did when he was the senior pastor. He didn't get fired; he got refired.
Yeah,
He didn't quit. He got even stronger." People ask me all the time. The questions I get from pastors all the time is, you hear some horror stories sometimes, but you ever have any problems with another former pastor being there? And then they always ask the question, since he's retired, does he chill? Does he, come in every once in a while? And I always tell them that my grandfather is my biggest fan. I mean, he's on the front row. He's the first one to say amen. He's the first one. And when I know the sermon wasn't that great, he said, "That's the best I ever heard." It just, it's great. But not only that, there's never been no problems, no disagreements, no trouble. The Lord has just been,
absolutely
wonderful in that. And so we know that. So it's been a great, and he don't miss. In fact, I preach a lot out. I miss more than he does. So it's just nice to have somebody that you feel comfortable with, to be able to leave the church if you need to while you're out preaching or on vacation or doing. And it's just been I know I hear things, but it's been a help to me. And I told him the other day, I said, "Grandpa," I said, "I think I'll slow you down when we have your 100th birthday party in 2040. Well, that'd be 2039 there, yeah, in December. So 2040, I'll scale back his hours a little bit from doing this." But we have some questions, right?
Yes.
All right. What are some of the questions that we got?
Do you have a favorite sermon that you have preached?
Yes. One and of course probably another is that knowing and the preacher why I must go on. Why I must go on has got to be my favorite sermon.
Yeah, I heard we was talking about this week. I put, since everybody's in quarantine, put your favorite sermon that you've ever heard on there, and I had hundreds and hundreds of people, but a lot of them, some was saying why I must go on. But the most popular one that was on my live stream was Back to the City.
Yes.
In at the assembly, where they all was really. Wayne Halcomb said the other day, he said that was one of the most impactful sermons that he had ever heard, that really gave him an urging to preach and do that. So what was another one you got there?
Someone asked, because they are unsure, what does Pastor Emeritus mean? Is that a retirement title, or what does that mean?
It's just it's really a term of endearment and honor. It's an honorary title that's given for a fact of a job hopefully well done.
Right, and I amen that 100%. If you have a couple questions, you can ask in. I know that we had a couple interruptions there, if you wanted to ask. I know some people was messaging me, so just put it on the thing and Jalen will ask them. You got another one there?
Yes. How did the ministry start in India?
How'd you meet Sam? Tell a little story about how you met Sam there.
I met Sam when I was there with Sister Strong organizing the children's home in Vellore, India. And just I was able, and of course it was ordained of the Lord, I know, because we met and he invited me to speak. And I went to the meeting and spoke at that church. We said we were on top of a building in that, because of course many of the people in India in the rural areas, that's when the sun goes down, they go up on top of the house. It's cooler and so forth. And so, but there we were having service, and that grew into now 40 churches plus about 20 preaching stations. And we're talking about beautiful buildings now, church buildings that have been built that all started from a little sit-down meeting on top of a bank in Vellore, and that's how all of that started.
And your granddaughter Angie loves India just as much or more.
She does,
than you. Somebody messaged me and said they wanted to know. They knew I was your grandson, but did you have any other grandsons that were pastoring right now?
Yes, we seems to me like we have new ones all the time. But of course, Pastor John is my second oldest grandson, but Pastor Doug, who is in Somerset, Kentucky, and they're involved in a new building project right now. He's a few months older then. But it's Doug Walden, and he's there in Somerset, Kentucky. They're working on this building, putting it together. And then I have another grandson that pastors in Kent, Ohio, a little burg out from Kent in Brimfield, Ohio, and doing a great job. They have a beautiful campus there, about 12, 13 acres, and they're just doing a splendid job in their work. And we have so many brother-in-laws and nephews, and I think somebody counted them not long ago and said there were 47 of them all together. So that's quite a group. So
you have me here, and you got Doug in Somerset, which is really a product of Aspinwall Church.
Yes.
And then you have Jeremy in Brimfield, so you have 3 grandsons, but then he has one son, which is my dad, that pastored in Brimfield 20-some years, and now he's our presiding bishop of the Church of God in Mountain Assembly, and he worked with you a couple times here.
He worked with me.
And started
Trailblazers.
Trailblazers ministry.
Started Trailblazers ministry.
Yeah.
It's been going since 1988.
So he has, and multiple. I mean, we have Tracy and his wife is youth pastor here for 30 years. In June, I think it's going to be 30 years or something like that. June or July, it'll be 30 years. We interviewed them this week, and then multiple families that work in church.
Nieces that are the head of the music ministry, and
right.
All of that. So we're a family that is known for ministry.
That's right. I like what Wayne Eisen said. He said somebody come to him one day. We're praying for you, Pastor Wayne. If you're watching, he watches them all the time. You hear, but he said somebody got mad at him one day and said, "There's too many Eisens in this church," and because they have a big family church. And he said, I looked at him right in the eye and said, "There ain't enough Eisens in this church."
Not enough, right?
So we believe the same thing.
Same thing.
And I believe that for any family. I believe that we ain't got enough of whoever's family in our church. You got some more questions?
Yes. Aspinwall had a prophecy about our property. Who was it? What did he say? And what year did he say it?
Ooh, we're gonna test your memory now.
Test my memory then. Well, when I came here in '74, I had a good crew then as well, and Brother Leo Euler, was one of my main ministers and trustee and a spiritual, godly man. And we were talking, and when I came here, they owned a couple of buildings that they were paying for because they were hoping to expand and for parking and so forth. But when God gave vision for this new building, and I was talking to Leo about it, and he said to me, and this had to be in 76, I'm going to say, because we didn't build that building until after I'd been here 10 years. But he said to me, he said, Pastor Walden, he said, I see really, and I believe it's the Holy Spirit, that one day that we will own this entire block, that we will own it, including that factory down on the corner, and we'll turn that into a ministry building, and we'll own this. So today, I'd like to report that we own this entire block, with the exception of two lots, and the rest of this that we already own. So pray for us that the rest of them will come, because I believe it was a prophecy of the Lord, and that it's been fulfilled one house at a time.
Right. Amen. You got some more?
Yes. How many countries have you preached in?
I've preached in France. I've preached in England. I've ministered in Egypt. I ministered in Israel. Ministered in Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, India, Jamaica, Haiti, Dominican Republic,
Mexico. So that's 12.
United States.
United
13.
States, 13.
Yeah, right.
And Hawaii.
Oh yeah, especially in Hawaii.
That's right.
Okay. Do you know how many preachers have been birthed under your ministry?
I do not, but there's been quite a number of them that has come out of this church. The pastor in Lorraine, his brother, and Brother Mooney Hanley talked about, Brother Prophet, and just many that are pastors, and our general overseer, James. He's my son, and was birthed through the ministry of this church. My brother-in-law, Ray Landis, and just one after another. It's been just, this church has been a producer of overseers and executives in this assembly, and workers for God, pastors, and Christian workers, people that had kind of retired and moved to other parts of the country, took over bus ministries, developed things that we were doing here in other places, where the gospel has grown through that.
I know of two pastors in the city of Cleveland that actually, one of them said they got the call to preach here in a Sunday school class that they pastor here in Cleveland, and another one that come to this church for a long time and says that he ran from the Lord, then come back to the Lord at another church, but he gives credit to this church also. So that's a great thing. That's there. So is that it? We got any more? All right. Well, it's been good. It's been an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, good.
So we'll try to patch all these together if we can, and make it one video and put it back on YouTube here in a couple of days. But we want to say thank you so much. We will try to have all this figured out again. But tomorrow night we will be interviewing on Monday night Brother Joe McGinnis, that does our homeless ministry, and Sister Denise Blakey, that does our food ministry, and they'll give you some information of how you can help if you're in need, how you can come. Just think, we have ministered to 500 families last month in some way, some capacity, with food or other assistance that we have done. And so we are thankful for that our church is able to do that. And we are looking forward to doing more. So God bless you is my prayer. Help us when we put this back on. Share the video. And don't forget, Pastor E will be teaching Wednesday night also, and the 7 Last Sayings will be on Saturday. So tune in for us, and we'll make sure we do the best we can. God bless you is my prayer.
Everybody